Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. Today we have with us Kristy Lott. She's an entrepreneur, a CPA, and a mother. She specializes in working with creatives. She started off going to school to be a psychologist and then realized that that wasn't where her joy was. Instead, it was helping people, working with people, and she could find a way to do that without having to go to school for 10 years. And so she started off by working with her uncle in his accounting business and really enjoyed it. She's a self-proclaimed nerd and a lover of numbers. But as a small business and an individual CPA, she works with her clients from the beginning to the end. So from a small business all the way up to a large business. And she really focuses on loving on them and helping them see the growth potential that they have. She wants to make sure that understanding their financials is simple and to remove the fear from the way they're doing their taxes or looking at their numbers, and to really bring it down so that they can use that financial information to make decisions in their company. Kristy is a lot of fun. She's my CPA, and I enjoy talking to her and hanging out with her and getting to know her. We're going to talk about today where creatives struggle with their financials. We're going to dig in a little bit to scalability and why growing a bigger company doesn't always mean more profit. We're also going to talk about making really tough choices to create the business that you want for the season that you're in. Enjoy. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Kristy, thanks for being with us today.
Of course.
So, Kristy, I work with you, and you know I love you, and you are an accountant extraordinaire. What I'd love to have you do today is share a little bit with our listeners about your business. You can tell us a little bit about your journey. I would love to hear how you started and then where you are now.
Yeah, so I have always had a passion for people, and I have always adored helping people and watching them grow. And I actually went to college to be a psychologist because I really wanted to be able to help people. And I quickly realized that I did not want to go to school for 10 years. So I took a step back and looked at what I loved doing and how I could still help people. And I did an internship with my uncle, who is an accountant, and realized how personal it was and how much he was able to help people and really be able to come alongside people and help them grow. And I love doing math because I'm a nerd, or else I wouldn't be a CPA. And so I went into the accounting world and just have really enjoyed working alongside small business owners, being able to help them understand, talk to them like a normal person instead of someone in a suit and tie. And so that's kind of where my business kind of came from and how it has grown.
I love the fact that you say accounting is personal. I can tell you from my experience, I mean, I know it's personal, right? Because you are in the weeds with somebody. You learn so much about them, about their spending habits, their saving habits, what's important to them and what's not. But I would say that many people don't see their accountant and working with their accountant as a personal relationship. They see it very, like you said, suit and tie, standoffish relationship. And so because of that, many small business owners, I know some that I've worked with, they barely have a relationship with their accountant. And why do you think that relationship is so important? I know you love on your clients, you spend time with your clients, and it's got to be from the background of, the psychology and all of that. But what is it that you think drives you to have that personal relationship and to actually be on the same side of the table as your client? Because many times it feels like the accountant's on the other side telling us everything we should and shouldn't do. But I see my relationship with you and the relationship you have with your other clients, you're on the same side of the table, helping them work towards, the goal that they have in mind.
I think that most of that probably comes from just watching people be intimidated by everything accounting, whether it's financial statements or IRS or whatever the case may be. And just being able to provide peace in people's lives, that's what drives me. And so coming alongside people and helping them understand and giving them peace about what's happening in accounting, giving them understanding is invaluable. And I just think that there's so many accountants out there that do have more of an accountant mindset rather than a teaching mindset. And they have a hard time communicating well with clients. And so I think that that's the way that they cope, is by sitting across the table in your words as opposed to coming alongside, just because they're kind of missing that social aspect a little bit in regards to coming alongside people and teaching them.
And I think that's the reason that you and I love working together so much, Kristy, is because my heart is in the same place, is to take things that seem difficult and overwhelming and teach and educate and provide that peace and that ownership. Because when the business owners that I know we both work with, once they understand and they can have some ownership and control over those numbers and in the direction that their business is heading, I mean, you can see the difference in how they interact with you, and I can see the difference as well. And I love that because, I think our goal is the same, is to empower the men and women that we're working with so that they don't feel less than when it comes to the numbers in their business. Mm-hmm. Kristy, have you always been profitable in your businesses from the first day?
I'm one of the few people that I can almost say yes for the entire period of time that I've been in business. Obviously, when I first went into business, I had some expenses in excess of the income that I was bringing in. But within a month or so of being in business, I have always been profitable. And I think really a big part of that is planning so much before I went into business, and also knowing that we could survive as a family without my income. However, we really, really wanted that income back. And so it enabled me to grow at the speed of my profit and turn those profits bigger and be able to survive off of that in the future.
Well, I have to say, it does make me excited that my accountant could start off being profitable.
True.
Right? I mean, let's be honest. I just interviewed Mike McAllowitz, and, his comment was, when we are working with another company, we want that company to be profitable, whether we come out and say it or not. We really want them to be profitable if you look at profitability along with sustainability. And so I would hope that the person advising me on my own accounting was profitable. But I also know that there are many bookkeeping and accounting practices, just like interior design practices, that are not profitable. And so it does come with a plan. I was going to ask you, but you answered it. What do you attribute it to? And I think you were blessed to have an uncle who was an accountant. You'd studied on it and you made a plan. I think that's really important. Can you tell me a little bit, if you can remember, about what you thought about to be able to create a business that was profitable, from the beginning? Because that does not happen by accident.
Right. Well, I think probably the biggest thing that I came up with first was, how much money do I have to make in order for my family to survive? And so I don't remember the exact number, but let's say it was $20,000. I'm just making up a number. And I sat there and I said, okay, even if I take this leap of faith and leave my job in order to make this happen, I can go work at McDonald's and on the side and still make this happen. So the first thing that I thought of was sustainability for my family and coming up with a plan, because I feel like when you have financial stress, your business suffers. You make poor decisions. You try to cut corners sometimes, and you also pressure sell instead of selling out of a different place in your heart, if that makes any sense.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think the first thing that I thought of was, what do I need to be able to do to sustain so that I can go out and help people, and I'm not just trying to sell them a tax return or financial statements or whatever it is, that I can actually go to people and love on them and give them time to get to know me and love me back. So that was the first thing that I thought of. And then, of course, also I just evaluated all of the expenses that I was going to have. And so even if I did bring in a certain amount of money, knowing that all of that money wasn't going to be mine. So how much money did I actually need to make to cover my expenses, and then also be able to have enough profit left to pay myself based on our needs.
I love that. And I teach it the exact same way. Here's what I find interesting. Many of the creative businesses that we both serve, they start off oftentimes thinking about how much they need to sell without giving, I would say, due thought to how much do I need to bring home. I am amazed sometimes when I ask creatives, what salary do you need to make? And they look at me like deer in the headlight. What do you mean? And I say to them, look, if you were going to go out and get a job with another company, you would be talking salary requirements. Why are you not talking that same thing with your own company? I mean, to yourself. So I love that you did what I would consider kind of reverse engineering what that income statement needs to look like. Here's what I need at the end of the day. Here's what I need on the bottom line. Knowing that part of this is going to be profit that stays in the company, and part of this is money that's going to come into my house. And then what are the expenses? And I love that you then stepped back up and said, here are all the expenses that I'm aware of. I'm sure you created a buffer. And now here's what this looks like, in the idea of total sales. So total sales, let's subtract the expenses. Here's what I'm going to be able to live on for salary and profit. And I think that takes time to sit back and look at. And do you find too that some businesses, especially those in the creative industries, where they kind of fall into business, they just kind of start working and hope it all works out at the end?
Yeah. And, that's just the difference in personality, and why the people that are creative end up in that industry is because they're willing to take the risk in their business because they have passion that drives them a lot more than someone like me, who probably thinks through things a little bit more just because I'm an accountant and that's my personality. And so I feel like a lot of creatives do just end up with a business and they didn't even know what they were getting into. But there's always time to step back, even after you've started, and just take a couple days to yourself, go on a little retreat, and go ahead and stop and pause and take the time to go ahead and do that reverse budget like you just talked about, and make corrections moving forward. It's not ever too late to do that.
Oh, so true. And that's the way my first business started. I fell into a window treatment company in the interior design industry. And it literally started because we had just moved into our home about 18 months before, and brand new house, new subdivision. And I had made all these window treatments for my home. And, we were playing bunco, and the kids were all getting together and having play dates. And so the moms saw my house. And they literally, in January of 2000, my doorbell rang and two of my neighbors were standing there. And one had a bolt of fabric. And she said, if you will make for us, for our homes, what you've done in yours, we'll pay you. That is how my business started. So I didn't have time to plan. I literally had a choice in that moment to say yes to my two neighbors who were standing on my front doorstep, or to say no. So I said yes. And then I figured out the business as I went. And I remember not even really thinking about how much money do I want to make as a salary. And I'd left a 6-figure income in corporate. I still didn't even think that way, right? And I worked and built financial accounting software. So like you, I'm a process numbers gal. And I still didn't think that way because I was just thinking I'm going to make enough to bring in some extra. And then I started realizing the time, the effort, the energy, and all that, and took a step back and did that reverse engineering or that budgeting process that says, what is all this going to be worth to me? So I love that you are saying that it's never too late. And I know even now, after having owned my own company for 18 years, I still stop and go back and do that same exercise every year to see now what is this year going to bring? What is my plan for this year? Do you do it like that as well, Kristy?
Yeah, I do. I always do a budget every single year to figure out what I need to do in order to survive, which sounds funny because I've been in business for, gosh, I don't know, almost 10 years. But every single year, I still make sure I know what I need to do to survive. And every year included in that, I try and figure out really what I want to make as a business owner. And I figure that into my budget too, in regards to coming up with what I need to do from a revenue standpoint. So just like you said, every single year I'm stopping and going through this process again. Although I have to say it's easier when you're doing it every year than that first time.
It really is, because then you have data, you have information. And my Understanding Your Financials course, the online course that I have, I teach how to do the budget and how to pull the financials from the last 2 years and pull those profit and loss sheets. And it literally almost creates itself. So then it just comes down to, am I spending the money the same way this year that I spent it last year? And is there anything new I need to add? So the questions get tighter and it actually becomes a much quicker process. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Definitely. And it's actually my favorite part of my year at the end of the year, when I know that sounds really nerdy, getting to do my budget for the next year, because it shows you how much you've grown and it gives you something to look forward to in the upcoming year. And so it's to be able to pause and look at how well you've done that last year and what you know you can achieve for the next year is liberating.
Oh, it's my favorite time of the year as well. And I, each year towards the end of the year and the beginning, probably like December, January, I usually host a retreat for some of my one-to-one clients. And we've gone to the Bahamas, we've gone to Isle of Palms, and we take a week and we sit down and review every single thing that happened in their business and every single thing that we're planning for the next year, staffing, growth, slowing down, maintaining, everything, new business model, new, pricing model, whatever it is, and make a plan. And it's fun, it's liberating, it's exciting. And when we do it towards the end of the year, on January 1, we don't have to stop and think, oh my gosh, here's a new year. Now, what am I going to do? You just get up and march to what you've already created. But I've watched business owners be so empowered by that exercise. They came in scared to death to do it. But after they've done it, it's kind of like, oh, that's all I really need to do. And then you just make the plan to make it happen. So I'm with you. I love that part of the year. It's one of my favorite times as well. So I'll be nerdy right along with you.
Thank you.
But you know what? I'll tell you this, not doing it, my business always over the years, like at the beginning when I did not do that exercise, I didn't think about it. I just didn't do it. I just kind of always took what came. Now I go get what I want. So instead of waiting on what's coming to me, I go get what I want, meaning I'm focused on who my ideal client is. I'm focused on where I want my business to go. And I feel like it's put me in the driver's seat. And I don't think there's any problem with saying, hey, I'm 10 years in and I still do this, right? Because every large corporation does a yearly budget. I've sat on the board of a nonprofit for 9 years. We did a yearly budget every single year to plan for where we would be. And I would say companies that are really watching what they're doing are all doing that exercise.
I agree. And it's also just so easy to let your expenses run wild when you don't have a plan. You just end up doing the extra lunches, or you end up spending a little bit too much on, fabrics in this case, or whatever the case may be. And without percentages or guidelines on fixed expenses, it totally changes the game when you can stop mid-year and see, oh, I'm on track. Oh, it's not out of control, because those things happen so quickly. And then next thing you know, you're wondering why you're not taking home as much as you thought you were going to be taking home.
And we were probably out eating that money. We were eating all the time, right? I mean, I've had a couple of clients that I've had to say to them, you're, why am I not bringing home the money I want to bring? And I'm like, well, let's look at meals and entertainment. It's because you're traveling and eating the money. And so we need to back that down a little bit. But, I check mine every month and every quarter. And not that everybody has to check every single thing every month, but every quarter, it's nice to be able to look at it and say, as you mentioned, these fixed expenses are supposed to be X amount of, my gross profit or real revenue. And that's the beautiful part that I love about being a profit first coach, is that we teach live on what the company can afford. And if we're not looking at those expenses, we're not aware of what they should be, the percentage / amount that we budgeted for them to be, it is so easy to overspend and to do it without being conscious of it and then wondering where it went. Whereas the beautiful thing is it forces you to at least consciously make a decision on how you're spending that money.
Right.
So let me ask you this. What do you see? I mean, we've talked a lot here, but what do you see as the biggest struggle that creatives have with profitability? Do you think it's that they are struggling with being unaware of their expenses or how it fits together, or what do you think it is?
I really think the biggest thing is exactly what you just said, just being unaware of where everything stands. Because let's be honest, most people don't like to sit down and do their financial statements or figure out what their income and expenses are. There's way more fun things for interior designers to be doing than that. But knowing where they stand in regards to income and expenses and profitability is the biggest struggle that I see. And going alongside with that is also understanding what it means. So even if they do create some sort of income statement or profit and loss, or if they have someone create it for them, a lot of times I feel like there's, going back to the intimidation of just everything accounting, they're scared to look at it because they don't know exactly what it means. And so I think, number one, knowing it and getting it done, and number two, understanding what it means if they do have it, are the two biggest issues that I see in regards to profitability and making good decisions for interior designers.
I would agree with that. And what's interesting is, here's the feedback I get quite often. Michelle, I'm a creative. I'm not a numbers person. And I just want to push back on that for a minute, because I can tell you in the interior design industry, and this is what I tell my clients, that's a lie. That is a lie that we're telling ourselves. And here's why. In the interior design industry, interior designers are working with numbers all day long. They are working with numbers as they take square footage, as they figure out how much product to order, as they figure out the pricing and their markup on product, as they are figuring out just even scale and proportion in the room. Our window treatment designers and fabricators and upholsterers, they're all doing the same thing. They're doing geometry and algebra all day long. The problem is this disconnect that we think that accounting and bookkeeping and financials is outside of our understanding. And it's not. It really is not. If you've got it laid out and educated properly, it's not outside of our understanding as creatives. And so, that's been my big push, is to try to help people understand what those documents mean, what they look like, and then how to use them. Because they do us no good if we have them, but we don't know what to do with them. And I was shocked. I did a presentation at High Point Market to about 70 designers. And one of the questions I asked was, do you get your income statement, your balance sheet from your accountant or bookkeeper? Yes. And then I asked how often they looked at it. Kristy, I will tell you the majority of them either didn't look at it or looked at it once a year. For those, I would scattering maybe looked at it quarterly. When I asked how many looked at it monthly, I think there were 5 people in the room. And when I asked them if they knew what they were looking at, they said no. They said, we just look at it to say that it was done, and then we check it off the list. But we have no clue what we're looking at, and we do not use it for any of our decision making. Mm-hmm. And I find that sad.
It's so normal, though, to see that in that industry and really all across the creative industry. And I really think it, again, comes back to just intimidation of thinking that there's not the knowledge there. But there's so many people out there, whether it's through coaching or your CPA or whoever it is, that can help you learn how to read that. And I would very easily argue that reading a profit and loss is a lot easier than all the math that you interior designers do all of the time. It's simple adding and subtracting how much money is left at the end of the day. So if you can look at your bank account and see how much money is left, you can learn how to read this. It's not, it's not anything that's rocket science. You don't even have to take out a calculator. So
that's right. The math is done for you. It's just understanding where it goes. Let me ask you this. So let's say, and I'm in total agreement with all of that, but let's say that somebody also comes to you, because I get this question a lot. So I'm going to move over and ask this one of you. Michelle, I'm thinking about moving out of my home office or out of my home space. I want to go get a building. I want to rent. I want to buy. I want to do whatever. How can we tell if we're ready to take that step?
So I think that goes back to the planning and budgeting thing again, is number one, stopping and taking a step back and figuring out what the plan is. And just to kind of give a quick snippet of my story, and kind of in regards to that, I know I'm not an interior designer, but business is business. I worked out of my home for a little bit, and I stepped out, got an office, had 8 employees earlier this year, actually, and just decided to move back home into my home office again. So this question is very relevant for where I am right now. And I think that the biggest question that you have to think about, not only in regards to finances, but in business in general, and before you even think about the financial side, is to step back and think about what you love about your job and what you hate about your job. I literally made notes of what I loved and what I didn't like, and also goals on where you want to be in 5, 10, 20 years, and just making sure that the decision to step out into a storefront and hiring employees and all that kind of stuff is really where you want to be in that time period. That's your goal at the end. I feel like a lot of people grow on accident, kind of going back to your story of how your business even started. It was an accident, things just happen. And so really knowing where you want to be is just so vital. And then once you know where you want to be in 10 years, let's take the steps to be there, and looking at the budget, and if your business can afford to move out. Once you have that rent payment, can you still take home what you need to take home in order to help your family survive? And can you hire the people to be in the storefront? What do you need to do there? And I think that another aspect to that, which Michelle, you and I have talked about before, is what role do you love playing inside of your business? Is it managing people, or is it actually the hands-on day-to-day business? Because that role shifts a little bit when you do take that step.
I would say that role can actually shift a lot, right?
Yes, a little bit was an understatement.
Yeah, right. Well, and I know I shared this with you prior to our recording, that one of my good friends, who is the president of a really large company within the interior space, told me that when he stepped into the role of president, that his job became 85% HR. And so I see that even from the clients that I coach that have storefronts and that have open spaces, they do a lot of people management. And so it does reduce their time to either do, the sewing aspect if they're a workroom, or the actual hands-on with the client designing a space, because now they have to manage so many other pieces and parts. And if that's the like you said, Kristy, the piece and part that they love, that's a beautiful thing. But if they hate the management and they hate people, not that they couldn't put somebody in the role to do that, but that means you've really got to grow bigger to be able to hire somebody just to manage all the other people that you have. So, it needs to be thought out, and there needs to be a plan. It makes me think of E-Myth. Mm-hmm. The more your company grows, the more you're no longer the technician. And he starts off, with an analogy of, I think the woman made pies. And so she was great at baking pies, and somebody said, oh, you should open a bakery. Well, once she opened a bakery, she realized she wasn't the one making the pies anymore. She was the one running the bakery, and somebody else was making the pies. And which is fine if you like that. But if you're not equipped and you don't want to do it and you don't like it, why do we feel this need that we have to grow and go in that direction if it's not what suits us, or it doesn't fit our 10-year plan? I think that brings up a lot of decisions and choices that we need to make. The last thing we need to do is grow because of somebody else's expectation of us.
Right. Well, and I think sometimes we put that speaking for myself, we put that expectation on ourselves. It's always great to be bigger, right? More people know you, you're helping more people. It's kind of a pride thing, I guess, a little bit. If I grow more, then I can make profits off of other people and I'll be making more money. But from being there and doing that, I didn't make more money, and I was pulling myself into more of an HR role, like you were just saying, as opposed to doing the hands-on stuff with clients that I absolutely love doing. And so bigger doesn't always mean more profitable, more money. It doesn't always mean that you're happier, or any of that kind of stuff. I think that really it comes down to your personality and what you want to be doing on a day-to-day basis.
That's right. And both of them are, great options. Keeping your business small, home-based, or a small office base. And, as well as having a large firm with multiple employees. They're both great. It's making sure that you go into it with your eyes wide open and with a plan. Because bigger, you're right, does not always mean more profits. And many times it means less profits, more stress, because the stress around keeping everybody else employed is something that we really have to stop and think about. There's one thing, if I don't bring in enough money and I'm the only one who has to live on that money, you know what I mean, or be dependent upon those sales. Right. But when I've got 4 or 5 other families, or in your case, 8 other families that are dependent on this company bringing in money, and your employees get paid before you get paid, that the stress of that is much higher than if I'm the only one who is impacted.
Right.
You also are in the time of your life where you're balancing work and family. I'm sure that probably played into your decision to take a step back and restructure the way that you were doing business. Don't you think that is also, I would say, an aspect that you see your clients working through as well, husbands and wives, right? To figure out how to balance wanting to, especially good night. We're all in Atlanta traffic. You and I both are. That decision on bigger business, more stress, all of it plays into the choices that we make. So do you see your clients kind of working through that too?
I think it's a struggle of every small business owner. I've yet to meet one that has said, I have it all figured out and I balance my work life and my personal life perfectly. I haven't met a single one. It's really the biggest struggle about being self-employed is managing your time well. And it is the hardest to do it, I think, being self-employed as opposed to working someone else, because those lines get so much blurrier. And so I think that making your family and knowing what you want your family life to look like a priority, and again, working backwards into the business is so vital, because I went into business, so I didn't have a child at the time, but I knew that I wanted to be able to be there for her or him. When I went out on my own, I wanted to be able to be there if they were sick or anything like that. And I grew my business, and all of a sudden, if I was at work, I felt bad for not being at home. And if I was at home, I felt bad for not being at work. I felt like I was constantly letting someone down. And so making those boundaries and figuring out a good work balance that works for you, whether it is taking things outside the home or in the home, it's different for everybody. And what boundaries work for me might be different from what boundaries work for you. And I think that everybody has to figure that out individually. And I think, unfortunately, as a small business owner, it's constantly a moving target as your family grows and changes.
And that's exactly what happened with my business over time. I started my business when I think my children were like 2 and 4.5. And my profit goals, my business goals were very different than what they are right now. And I can remember the majority of my work being done. I had to work. I didn't have to. I chose to stay home. I'd already left corporate. And, that was so that I could be home. And so I worked while my children were in mother's morning out, while they took naps. And I did a lot of my work at night so that I could be with them during the day. And then as they grew up, I remember when my work day became, whatever the elementary schedule was at the local school. Oh my goodness. I get to work from like 8. I think we dropped him off at 7:50. I get to work from 8 till 1:30 before I have to go sit in carpool line or meet the bus. And then I remember when my business expanded and I chose to work while they were in middle school hours, and I got so many extra hours. And I'm telling you, by the time they were in high school and had a car and could drive, my day expanded again. And, over the years, I did less work at night and more during the day so that I could be there with homework. I could be there to get them, back and forth. I could still be room mom and PTA mom or whatever else I wanted to do. And my husband and I worked out that was best for our family. And so my business goals changed, the budget changed, everything shifted. And even when I started this coaching business back in January of 2013, I still had a son that was graduating high school, and I had one that was a freshman in high school. And now I'm at the point that I have one who's completely adulting and one who's, in the last couple of years of college. And so every year, to your point, Kristy, my business has changed and morphed and grown so that I've had this plan. And now I don't have to balance it quite the same, because everybody leaves my house at 7 and nobody else gets back home till 7. And that should be plenty of time to get my work done, right? If anything, I almost have to pull back from work now to make myself slow down to have a life outside of what I do, because I love it. But don't you think that's the beautiful thing of owning our own company, owning our numbers, owning our decisions, working within our family to find what works for us, and then making it work?
Yeah, it's the best part about being an entrepreneur and owning your own business is it's okay if, at 12 o'clock today, my daughter's school calls me and says she's sick. I can make that time up another time. And to be able to have that flexibility and ability to be there for my family it's invaluable.
And here's my push, because I work with, of course, primarily women, but I have some that are, moms. They're in the same stage of life that you're in. And for some of them, their time is limited, or they've got elementary school kids. So just like, I've been there. I know what that looks like. I know what that feels like. I so totally resonate with your comment of when I was parenting, I felt like I wasn't at work, and I was at work, I wasn't parenting. I understand the tension there. But what is so fantastic is that in each of these stages, we still can be profitable in that stage if we keep our eye on the financials. So it's not like you're only going to be profitable later in life, or you're only going to be profitable when you get to, this kind of version of your business. It's possible to be profitable at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. It's just scale. It just has to be within scale.
Right. And I think a lot of that also comes down to like you said, knowing the numbers, but also knowing what your profit centers are and where you're making money. And, I'm more profitable now than I was when I didn't have a kid. And I probably work a little more than I did then too, but it's stuff that I love doing. So it doesn't feel like work. And I know what things I'm doing that make money and which things I'm doing that don't make as much money. And I can make better decisions in order to drive my profits higher without having to work as hard.
Exactly. Kristy, question for you. Tax laws change all the time. And I know we've had some pretty big tax law changes that are coming up effective this year in 2018. Is there anything about that you can share with us? And I know this is going to be a very broad stroke, and each person needs to go talk to their accountant about their individual situation. But what are just some high-level things that maybe we should have on our radar to be aware of?
Yeah. Well, obviously, a lot changed at the very end of the year last year. In regards to tax laws, the tax rates changed, which you can go look those up. It's not very exciting, but for most people, your tax bracket's going to go down a little bit, so you're going to pay a little bit less in income taxes. But really the biggest thing that is a huge benefit for small business owners is called the qualified business income deduction. And what that is a 20% deduction based off of the profits or wages of your business, depending on the structure of your business. And that is a huge, huge, huge benefit. So just to kind of clarify what a deduction is, it's basically like an additional expense that you get to take off of your taxes. So if you had a profit of $100,000, you could potentially get another deduction or expense of $20,000. So you'd only be paying tax on $80,000. So that's really the biggest thing for small business owners that I think came out this year, that everybody needs to make sure that their CPA knows about, and also that they plan for, because there are some income limitations that go along with that. So whether, your business is rocking it or your spouse, has a solid income, there are phase outs and limits to that. And so that's something that needs to be highly planned around for this tax year and the tax years moving forward.
So you made a good point there that we need to talk to our accountants. How often do you think that small business owners should talk to their accountant, meet with their accountant, or have some type of a check-in, email, phone, in person, whatever it might look like?
Yeah. I like to keep in touch with my clients at least 3 times a year is my minimum. Some of them need more than that. Some of them need less. But that's at least my check-in points. And those timelines are, obviously, we're going to talk whenever we do your taxes, which is normally, hopefully, at the beginning of the year. And then I like to do a mid-year check-in, just see how things are going, see what kind of goals you have for the rest of the year, see if your income is way up, way down, whatever the case may be, so that you can plan for estimated taxes or retirement or whatever that may be. And then I also like to do a tax planning meeting around October-ish, and that way we can make some decisions on whether or not to do any big purchases, or again, if you want to put more into retirement, whatever the case may be. I like to have a couple months of time before the end of the year, so you have time to make a movement on any decisions that are made. So those are kind of the 3 times that I would recommend. Again, some people I meet with quarterly, and really that's more so people that their income is shifting a lot from quarter to quarter, and we need to look at estimated taxes or something like that. But I would say at least those 3 times throughout the year, at least a check-in.
And so how do we go about finding the right accountant? Because like we've talked about earlier, different accountants have different personalities, just like we do, and different business needs. Do you think it's important for the accountant to understand the industry that we're working in?
I think that it's vital that the accountant understands the industry that you're in. It doesn't mean that they have to work exclusively with interior designers, but you need someone that's going to understand service, and someone that's going to understand product, and someone that's going to understand sales tax. And really in the interior design industry, y'all touch so many different aspects of the business world that if you were to go and work with someone who just works with services or just works with people who create products, you're really going to be doing yourself a disservice, because you're going to be missing half of what your industry holds. And so working with someone that knows your industry in particular, I think is very, very important.
So I'm going to be in 100% cheer mode for that. And also, I think it's important, like you said, interior design touches so many aspects. The bookkeeping behind interior design is more than I think most people, think about it on the I guess at the beginning. I'll just say that. Simply because we are hitting everything: estimates, purchase orders, inventory. I mean, it's huge. And then when you add in e-design and servicing clients across state lines, I mean, so much more comes into the buying and selling of product and service, crossing state lines and receivers in multiple states. And so really having somebody who has a full understanding of both sides, product and service, I'm with you. I think that is absolutely vital. So what are some of the questions we should be asking, Kristy, to make sure that we are in alignment? I mean, I always tell my clients, I want you to interview the accountant, because they should be interviewing you first to see if you can even work together personally, right? Can you communicate. But then also, is there an alignment there? But what questions would you suggest that our listeners ask to find the accountant that's right for them?
Yeah. So I think the first question that I think anyone should ask their accountant is, how do you work with your clients? How often do you like to meet with people? How do we meet? Do I initiate that? Do you initiate that? Just understanding what that relationship looks like and who's responsible for what moves is going to create the most beneficial relationship with that CPA if it's the person that you decide to move forward with. Just understanding the relationship. And then in regards to the person themselves, and if you're going to be able to work well with them, it sounds kind of cheesy, but I would ask them about their passions and what they do on the weekend and all of those kind of things. And I would have a semi-personal conversation with them during that first meeting. Not extremely personal, but at the same time, just make sure that you have a good rapport with them and that it is someone that can communicate well with you. Because if they're not going to be open and able to talk to you about more than just your profit is X amount of dollars, then you're going to lose interest. They're not going to be really explaining things to you. You want someone that's willing and open to have a conversation with you. And then I guess the last thing that I would kind of say is just, I would ask them a little bit about what is their favorite ways to help small businesses save money in taxes. And a good CPA is going to be someone that is going to tell you ways that you can save money without having to spend more money. So they're actually looking after the profits of your business and shielding your money from tax liabilities through avenues that you get to maintain some of your cash at the end of the day.
I love that. I also love, I think one of the questions I asked you was, what is your approach? Are you conservative or you are a huge risk taker? Because I'm conservative in my approach. Now, I want to go as far as I can, but to be legal. And I also wanted to know before I started working with you, I want to take advantage of every single thing that I can and not raise audit flags. And I think that's important because sometimes I've worked with some clients who had accountants who I would say were huge risk takers. And they didn't ask some of those questions. And sometimes people can get into some really hot water with the IRS and with others because they were maybe not as diligent with looking at everything. And yes, we want to shield our money. Yes, we want to, bring home more profits. Yes, we want to pay the least amount of taxes possible that we legally owe. But we want to do it all legally. I mean, I think that's a key word there.
Well, and I think something you said to me, Michelle, I think it was either when we first started or maybe it was in reference to a client, but it was a long time ago, is you want your CPA to be aligned with your morals and your values. And so when you go and interview someone, you want to make sure that if you want to do business the way that you just explained, which hopefully is the way everybody wants to do business, that your CPA is aligned in that same way, and they have the same thoughts about growing their business and treating their clients the same way and all that kind of stuff, because really you want to create a partnership, and you only want to be in partnership with someone that treats their business the way that you would want to treat business.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's how I've chosen, my attorney. That's how I chose to work with you as my accountant. That's how I've chosen to work with bookkeepers. Is I want to know what do you believe about where things should go? If it's totally, an expense that the IRS says you cannot deduct, are you willing to put that on that return and push it through anyway, knowing that it is illegal? What are your thoughts on that? And so having that discussion helps me make sure that before I send my client, to go work with someone, that I know how that person works, and I just cannot, knowingly work with someone who's breaking all the rules and all the laws and send someone there. So I do think it's, it's a delicate discussion, but I think it's one worth having, because at the end of the day, if there's an audit and it comes back, everybody in the chain is going to get hit with what they knew and what they chose to do. Everybody's going to be responsible for their choices and their actions. with how we keep up. And ignorance does not get us off. That's the thing I would say to our listeners is if you don't understand your documents, you don't understand your accounting, if the IRS or the government comes in looking, ignorance does not get us out of, the repercussions of our choices. And so that's why it's so important to choose to work with a professional that can help us, right? Do it legally and do it in the right way.
Right.
I sure wish ignorance was bliss sometimes, but that's not.
It never ends up that way, does it?
It never ends up that way, no. And I've gone through state and, federal audits with some of my clients. And even when you have it all right and have it all in the right places, it still is very costly and takes a lot of time to look all of that up. So the more we're keeping up with it day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year, the better off we are.
Yeah. Well, and I think something else kind of speaking to that and just, I don't know the tax forms and I don't know if that's right. If you're looking at your financials all the time and have an idea of what's going on, you're going to know so much more about whether those financials look right than your accountant is going to know, more than likely. I mean, we know percentages if we're in the industry and if things look good or bad, but we don't know if he went out and hired that contractor to do X, Y, and Z or not. So a lot of times just being aware of what's on your financial statements will catch a lot of those things that are oddities that really only you're going to know because you're the only one in your business from day to day. And if someone's not asking the right questions, then they might not know that it's the right or wrong spot for those expenses to be. And it's so easy for someone to catch it when it's their own financial statements. And so being aware of that helps a lot on the day-to-day. And that in turn flows into your tax return at the end of the year.
Absolutely. I know, that's part of what I do with my clients. And you and I've talked about that before, Kristy, but even yesterday I was sitting down and going through and I look at, their income statement for the month. And then I always look at it from year to date, broken out by month, because then I can see trends. Like I could say, for example, your advertising bill went up $4,000 this month. What happened? And sometimes it's that they really did pay for advertising that was extra that month. And sometimes it meant that an item got miscategorized.
Right.
And so looking at, those statements monthly, like you said, and having an idea of where they should be, but then also looking at them over some term starts to show you trends and you can see what would raise a flag. I mean, if your meals and entertainment was 300, 3,000, you're like, okay, I'm hoping you went to a conference or something happened that was huge because that's an outlier. And what are we going to do about that?
And if you don't mind, Michelle, just go backwards for a second. Sure. To the question you asked about 2018 tax legislation and just popped in my head when you said meals and entertainment. Entertainment's not deductible anymore starting in 2018. So the meals are, but entertainment is not. So if you took people to, a baseball game or a football game or something like that, that would be considered entertainment and is no longer deductible for this year. Sorry, I forgot about that earlier.
And I think there's also been some changes too, to even the meals portion, how it needs to be documented. I mean, there needs to be firm documentation, not just I was doing an install at one house and ran to an install at the other and stopped to get lunch in the middle. That's not, from my understanding, a deductible expense for meals. I mean, it has to be more that you are entertaining a client, that you are working with your staff, and that there are goals and outcomes. I mean, it's got to be extremely related to the business now.
Right. Yeah. And that's always been the case. But yes, that is extremely true. That's not something that's really changed for this year. So,
but I think the spotlight's going to be on it a little more, given that they've taken the entertainment piece out.
Yeah, probably so. Because I think they're going to be going backwards and making sure entertainment's not in there.
Right. Which then makes them look at everything that is in there.
Right.
Is my point. Right. So I do think it is important for all of us as business owners. Again, ignorance doesn't get us out of this, and we can't just say it was the bookkeeper's fault or the accountant's fault. As a business owner, we own that. And so we do need to be aware of what is legally a deduction as much as we can, at least at the highest level. And you can go out and Google, IRS Meals and Entertainment 2018 and have the information available right in front of you to be able to read it and understand it. And then if you don't understand it, talk to your accountant and let them help you with it. So, Kristy, if you could offer one piece of advice to help those in the interior design industry be more profitable with their time or money or resources, whatever, what would it be?
I would just say that being in business for yourself is really rewarding and it's really hard work. So I would say just to know yourself, know your goals, know your numbers, and get around people that support and love you. And don't be afraid to change if you find something that you don't like about your business.
Oh, I love that. Support is so important. And I do think many times, and I've heard this over and over and over, how alone it feels. Even if you have a spouse, it still feels very alone sometimes in the decision making. And I'm a member of the Window Covering Association of America, and we always use the hashtag never in business alone or never alone, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important to remember. And that's why having the right accountant on your team is important. Kristy, I call you and email you, not a ton, but I know you're on my team. And I know that as things change in my business, as it grows or slows, or I choose to maintain, that you're going to help me get there. You've helped me change business structure. You've helped me choose tax shelter, all types of things over the years. And I know you've done the same with our joint clients and with your own clients. And so having that support with the right accountant, bookkeeper, lawyer, coach, whatever it is, friend group, is, I think, an absolute necessity to success.
Yeah.
So what's one of your next big profit goals in your business, or next big goals that you hope will bring you profit? I know you just, like you said, moved back home. That's a big one that you're working through right now, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I guess my next profit goal is really to maintain my profit, which kind of sounds funny. But part of my decision to move back home was to have more time and to be able to work with clients that I enjoy and industries I enjoy and situations that I enjoy with planning and all that kind of stuff. So my next big goal is really just to define who that is and to shift my business into that profit center that I enjoy the most while still maintaining my profits or my take-home pay and my goals and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm working on.
You got to love a good ideal client, right?
Yeah.
Right? Target market, ideal client, your niche, whatever, or niches, whatever they are. And I love that you brought that up, because that does impact our profits. It's difficult to be all things to all people. And as we just discussed, understanding an industry, maybe not down to the nth degree, it doesn't mean you have to be the interior designer, but having a firm understanding of that industry and all that it entails allows you to serve them better. And like you said, serve them and love on them and have them love on you. And so it is less profitable when it's an industry you don't like or don't understand or don't enjoy. What's pushing you to go figure that out? Nothing.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that goes back to your question where you said, how can they be more profitable in multiple ways? It wasn't just profitable as far as a financial standpoint. And so profit is technically a money number, but it's more than that when you're in business.
Absolutely. And I think that, that's the whole profit is a choice premise, right? Is that we could be profitable. There have been times in my life that I was profitable in building relationships and not equally as profitable with the money. But the money came later because I spent time building profitable relationships. Right. My next question for you is, what are you doing to put yourself in a position to be successful and profitable?
Gosh, that's a hard one.
I do think it's a hard one, but I think it's also one, like if I'm on the outside looking in, I think you've put yourself to be in this by recognizing that the path that you were on was not supporting where you wanted to go any longer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And of course, being an accountant, anytime anybody says profit, I automatically go to a financial standpoint. But I would definitely say, even from a financial standpoint and a relationship standpoint, just by moving home and going back to working in my clients' books and with my clients instead of managing employees for 75% of my week, I have shifted my health and my well-being and everything to a more positive place. And so by positioning myself in an environment that works better for my personality, because I'm introverted and extroverted, being where I can be at home and work on stuff and be in my clients' books and do the nerdy stuff as well as the extroverted meeting with clients stuff has totally changed the way that I look at business and the way that I do business. And so that's, I guess, how I've positioned myself to be more profitable in all ways, hopefully.
And I do applaud you so much. I mean, I have such high respect for the fact that, you went in one direction, did it, and you were profitable there, but you realized that what you wanted was different. And then you had the courage to change it. And you've offered that to our listeners earlier in our conversation today. And I want to offer it again. If you find that you're on a path that is not suiting you, it's okay to stop and set a new course and change a few degrees or a lot of degrees, right? It's fine to do a 1 to 2 degree shift or a 180 if that's what's needed. But we don't have to keep going in a way that does not make us happy and joyful and profitable. So we get to make that choice and make that change at any time. Mm-hmm. Kristy, where can people find you?
The best way to get a hold of me is normally via email, and I think Michelle will post that information on there, or
I'll have that in our show notes.
Yeah. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. I am on social media, but I'm an accountant, so nobody wants to follow me on social media.
Not a problem. Well, I will put your information out there, and I'm just so thankful that you love on my clients, our clients, that you love on those people. And I'm so thankful that you took time to be with us today. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Kristy.
Of course.
And everybody, I just want to let you know in the show notes, there will also be a link to the Understanding Your Financials course. So if you are in a situation that you don't understand your financials, you don't know what you're looking at, and you don't know how they flow through to your taxes, this is the course for you. And again, I will have links to Kristy so that you can reach out to her. I'd love to hear what you think and if you are keeping up with all of your numbers. So email us and let us know. Thanks, everybody.